Control? Control, this is Morgan.
Control to Morgan, control to Morgan. I'm receiving you loud and clear. Status, over.
I'm now entering the bridge and request confirmation of override password and protocol.
Roger that, understood. Stand by for protocol and password transmission. Control to Morgan. Protocol as follows. Keeping it real. Password as follows. Golf. Romeo. Oscar. Victor. Yankee. Confirm and initiate. Over.
Roger that, Control. Confirmed. Initiating now.
You have tuned in for a slick podcast. I'm here to seek the truth. Live from Scotland around the UK. The one and only slick podcast. Enjoy the show. Can I ask important questions? No matter how bizarre the truth might be. Tune in for Slick Podcast, keeping it real, keeping it groovy.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or a very good day to you when and wherever you're listening from, and a very warm welcome to the show. I'm your host, Simon Norrie King. Today's show is my second guest on this particular subject matter entitled UFOs in Our Timeline. Daniel Limbert is from tick-tock and hosts the channel The Foil Hat Theories. He started researching the UAP topic around 2 years ago after David Grush, a United States Air Force officer and former intelligence official, confirmed the US were in possession of both non-human technologies and also non-human bioorganisms, aliens to you and me. Daniel noticed that there wasn't and isn't any meaningful coverage by the mainstream media in the UK regarding that particular revelation, or UFOs, and the other related topics. So he created the Foil Hat Theory files to try and open people's thinking to the possibility of not only extraterrestrials existing, but also bringing other topics to the forefront. And as he clearly states frequently on his channel, when you start researching one thing, it opens up a complete minefield of rabbit holes. Yeah, we know that feeling. That inevitably lead to confirmation, confusion, and in a lot of instances, disinformation. The subject of UFOs in our timeline at present has affixed itself firmly into our everyday lives. Whether it's acknowledged by the majority of people is not the issue. Something very important is happening outside of the normal status quo right now. And we as a society need to see it and sit up and pay attention as to what is happening right now. I, for one, thought that if the American Congress had held 2 hearings with very credible witnesses giving their testimonies, it would have shaken the whole world and everyone be paying attention. But as it turns out, for some reason, not so much. So then, let's get to it. Without further delay, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Daniel Limbert to the show.
Thank you.
Let's get the ball rolling on this one. There is a huge increase in sightings of UFOs, and it's almost concurrent with the hearings in the US Congress of around 4 weeks ago. And I do remember one they had in January this year. These UFOs are being rebranded as drones or UAP'S. Yet this isn't getting the wow factor I'd expected it to have with the public or mainstream religion, or even our own government. Why is that, do you think?
I feel that not a lot of the public actually realise that the term UFO has been reclassified as UAP. So, for instance, unidentified flying object is now unidentified aerial phenomenon. For me, that's just turned it into more confusing for people and away from the actual subject. I feel the British government and mainstream media are still living in the 90s. For instance, I don't know if you remember in 1997, the Phoenix Lights incidents.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So Governor Fife Symington literally went live on TV, ridiculed over 10,000 witnesses by bringing one of his aides on dressed as an alien and said, yes, we found out who's responsible. And then literally years later, after retiring from office, he gave an interview stating that he actually witnessed an alien spacecraft going through the skies. So there's a lot of secrecy around the subject, because it's almost like they don't feel that we're ready to know what's out there. And in all honesty, the British government, I don't even think, are savvy enough to know what our MID or Secret Services are getting up to in regards to this topic, because the British government and the British media just seem to act like this just doesn't exist.
Yes, they do. And also a lot of people as well. And going back to that Phoenix Lights, when you were talking about a senator, obviously this isn't verbatim, a senator brought out somebody dressed as an alien. Now, I'm going to say in that crowd, it would have made 75% laugh and everything, and then set the tone for that very serious inquiry, tearing it up, spitting it out, and basically grinding into dirt, saying, nope, not interested. Or am I getting that wrong? Talk to me about that. No,
absolutely. Because, like I say, if you turn around and say, I've seen a UFO, people mock you, people will ridicule you. And there is so much going off at the moment, and there's so much going off back then. Back then, it was more of a case of it doesn't exist, you know. So, for instance, our media as well, there's so much that's gone under the carpet. So, yes, there's been drones spotted over UK, US air bases. But since 2021, there has been 25 drone sightings across the UK military installations, and they have only reported the ones since everything that's been going off in America.
So the point I'd like to make as well, that it's a fact. So as far as I know, that a fact can be, when we check it against the internet and stuff like that, that these things, whatever they are, these UFOs, can absolutely outperform anything from any military industrial complex that we know of anyway. So they obviously aren't us, which is going to bring me to my next question. If these intelligences are not us, aka maybe the ancients of Mu, right? So a civilization on this planet, maybe thousands of years ago, went the other way. They've always been here. Or even some nefarious government psyop. In your opinion then, whom or what are they?
I'm just like yourself. I'm looking for answers as well. Some think it's US government in coalition with other world governments to start of something called a conspiracy of Project Bluebeam. There's also lots out there thrown out there that it's theories of Chinese, Russians, Syrians, etc. But for instance, somebody came out the other day on one of the US news stations, categorically stated there is a Syrian mothership off the coast. And then that was quickly debunked, and there's no Syrian mothership. There's also, have you heard of a chap called George Knapp?
George Knapp.
So George is an investigative reporter. He does a lot of work in regards to UAPs and UFOs, and he's very respected in that area as well. I was used to think, no, you know, journalists, you don't really want to sort of follow journalists because you think they sort of make things up and stuff like that. But these types of guys, they're not sort of like your mainstream journalists just out for a story. They're going after the truth. Do you know what I mean? So, and George Knapp actually stated on one of his podcasts that he feels that, so for instance, the drones that are happening in America at the moment, you're completely right. They are completely outmaneuvering our state-of-the-art police drones, which are meant to be the latest technology. And George Knapp has turned around and gone, well, how do we not know that these otherworldly beings, if that is the case, how do we not know that they're replicating our technology in regards to being able to sort of get in our airspace? Do you know what I mean? Because at the minute we're just sat there going, what are they?
Yeah, 100%. That's the thing. It's either a very clever ruse or not. Because I was talking to James Dougal last week, asking exactly the same questions to him as I am to you, because I want at least two guests and three different perspectives, all the same perspective, myself and James and myself and you, right? So it's just a case of 22,000 miles an hour. This is what James said. The tic-tac, the classic, is taken from the gun camera. That's an estimate. We haven't got anything. And like you pointed out, if there was a living being, as in a human in there, with no, let's say, inertia dampers, that you just liquefy. So that's pointing to me, they ain't from round here. If they are from the ocean, as it's been pointed out, Congress didn't conjecture. They were saying, they're from the ocean. They've been here at least 100 years. What the hell, really?
Exactly, because Louis Elizondo said exactly the same thing. Louis Elizondo, he was one of the whistleblowers at the last Congress hearing, and he was on about G-force. And he was basically saying that the rate that these vehicles go at, the human body can withstand, I think he said something like 7 or 9 G.
Right.
These are going thousands of G, when when they're stood there and then all of a sudden they will literally just shoot off in another direction. It's the amount of G force of that they are traveling, it would just completely decimate a human body.
Right. So you eliminate the impossible, and whatever's left must be the truth, right?
Exactly. And that's what I mean, for him to categorically state that as well. And also so, for instance, the materials that we use for the different aircraft, the materials that they use for those, again, the G-force, it would completely just start to rip the aircraft to pieces if it was a human-made technology.
So I'm going to throw this one out there as well. I think I said this again last week. I think I did on the show before as well. In my opinion, in this last 4 coming on 5 years, there's been decades, let's say that again, decades, in my opinion, that is, of change technologically, socially, everything, just in the last 4 years, decades of change. Or am I being a little bit doddery here? What do you think about that?
I don't think our technology, so for instance, I was a teenager when mobile phones first came out. And I don't think our technology can go from where it has gone from sort of early 2000s in 24 years to where it is now, without some kind of reverse engineering. We have some form of otherworldly technologies. It's been categorically stated at the Congress hearings. We are doing something, and we are slowly but surely releasing the technologies to the world, I think, because
but socially as well.
Socially
as well. Do you not think decades of change have happened socially? Relationships and governments around the world and being at the brink of war. This is decades of change that has, like you're pointing out, that the technology is just zipped. So is everything else. It's just zipped. Or is it me? Is it me? Am I not seeing this? Am I remembering something that? I just think it's been like a beehive of change just in these last few years.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Ever since, literally sort of within the last 4 to 5 years, and that's ever since sort of the COVID lockdowns happened. Society has changed a hell of a lot. I mean,
massively. I
don't know whether that's got much to do with the current situation. I think that's more, with the lockdown, that was just crazy in itself. It was like everybody was prisoner in their own homes and things like that. And it did change sort of everybody's sort of reaction to the way things are now, like going to work, for instance. I mean, I work in recruitment, Simon. Actually trying to get somebody to go to a job in an office nowadays, since the lockdown, is unheard of. You are ringing people and you're saying to them, and then they turn around and go, "Is it office based?" And it's like, yeah, it's office based. Oh no, I'm looking for something more hybrid. Or no, I want to work from home. And it's
right.
And I don't know whether that is.
Well, here's the segue. In the way that I meant it, was a question of relativity. So if I was to put my hand on the radiator for 5 seconds, I mean, they're really hot in the moment, that would be so long. And for your looking at me with my hand on the radiator, it would just be 5 seconds. So it's a question of relativity. These last 5 years, it's just gone so quick and so weird. Okay, then let's get back to the subject matter. Just saying. In my opinion, humanity is more than ready for the truth of Are We Alone? Which, as it turns out, according to the many witnesses at the congressional hearings, trained pilots, observers, private contractors, security personnel, yada, yada, yada. Personally, I think there will be the inevitable upheaval with the religious side of society, both positive and negative. What are your thoughts on that?
That is a good question, because it could go one of two ways regarding religion, if confirmed. I mean, basically, religion is all about God creating the earth, creating the animals, and so on and so forth. It does not state anywhere in the Bible that God created the universe or galaxies or so on and so forth. So if this was to happen, I mean, for instance, I'm going to go off here a little bit, because the Vatican, for instance, they have a vault which is I think it was 50 miles by 50 miles, and in this vault is lots of hidden artifacts which I believe would destroy religion. If, for instance, UFOs were to turn up tomorrow and ET was to step out and ask to borrow your mobile phone to call home, how would that go down with the people that actually believe in religion? I mean, I grew up with religion, and I'll go into that a little bit more later. But, for me, that completely destroys religion. But at the same time, you've got all the people that don't believe. And if something was to turn up on your doorstep and make themselves aware, it could also make people want to believe in something because of the sheer fright of the situation of what's happening. So it could have a very detrimental effect on religion, because, like I say, that the Bible only states that the heavens were made, the earth was made. It mentions nothing about aliens or anything like that. So for me, it would make a lot of religious people start questioning their beliefs and start looking for other answers. But then at the same time, like I say, it would possibly drive the people that don't have faith and don't have belief more into the arms of religion, because it's going to create something very strange if it is true and if it does come out, because, like I say, it's something very big.
Yeah, I agree, but also I think for some people it will be affirming. It will affirm and strengthen their faith, but in a positive way. I wouldn't say I'm religious. Religion to me is doing things a certain way that a lot of other people do in exactly the same way. Nothing wrong in that, but that's not where I'm coming from. Where I'm coming from, my faith is in something much, much bigger than me, intelligent design, which distance is legion. There is no end to it at all, ever. I'm just hoping that whatever it is, if they are a thing, whether they are resident here and always have been, or whether they are just passing through or pulled through a bloody whatever, through the Hadron Collider, whatever they are, I just hope they are benevolent, not malevolent. Talk to me about that.
So just bear with me 1 second. You've
totally lost. Yeah, I'll have that effect on people. I'll have that effect. Okay, so the bottom line, if they are, I'm hoping they're benevolent. And I also, just to recap, I think it would be affirming to a lot of people with faith or people from religion. I think a lot of people also, it would affirm their faith. It would reinforce their faith. It would confirm their faith. There is something much bigger, and these just happen to be an extension of that. That's what I meant. I could have just said that in the first place. Couldn't I?
It's fine. Don't worry, because I've got.
Don't put the phone down, man. Really, don't.
For myself, like you say, I would rather be friendly. And to be fair with you, over the recent years, I mean, there's been lots of reports about UAP'S over installations, and there's been people reporting to sort of the US defense. When these things have been over these sites, they have lost control of the nuclear weapons. They've been able to, they've not been able to control anything. So for me, they're either coming down to see how we could respond to their attacks, or they've got, for me, they are here to warn us. Because if they were here to destroy the planet, I think they'd be here by now. Do you know what I mean? Because over the years, like I say, the amount of times that there have been reports over nuclear installations where the people on the ground that are in control of the computers and things like that, they have lost all control and not been able to program or operate anything. And then it's over other nuclear stations and things like that. So I think it's more of a case that they're more worried about what we're going to do to ourselves, because it's just strange how, like I say, if they were here to destroy us, I think they'd be here already. It's not like, I've lost my train of thought.
Here's the thing then. Well, why can't they be, bit of an unfair question, rhetorical, why can't they be more proactive? As if they're coming down to warn us, we the people, we're getting less and less saying this. I think if that was the case, and I hope it is, they're not just like hovering around and not doing anything. If a super civilization had the ability to make things much better for a species, forget any prime directive. I think we're way past that as a species that are able to accept that there are other life forms. Yeah, some people freak, but a lot of people, well, of course there is. And I just think that if they are doing what you say, they should be more proactive. More proactive. Like, I don't know, appear on the television screen or something like that.
I can't remember. I think it was in the 90s. Something. Can you not remember? I don't know whether you remember. On British TV, there was a new. And there was sort of something that came through, and it was apparently warning us about the planet and things like that. And everybody seems to think it was sort of a hoax, but there's not been anything to ever prove where that came from.
Yeah, that was actually back in the 70s, where hacking technology into things that are basically not digital, the analog, was very, very difficult back then. It was in the 70s, and it was, I can't remember the program, maybe it was Nationwide that was interrupted. So I'm going to take a stab and say it was something like between 74 and 77. And it basically overtook the airwaves. It sounded like a classic Doctor Who alien. Yeah. That's the only thing that hasn't got it from a technology, or how difficult it would be to pull that hack off way back then, in itself gives it credibility, in my opinion anyway. So let's just move on. Have you yourself seen a UFO?
A few times. I wouldn't say, that's a UFO from outer space, but I went camping last year with my partner. We were sat there. We saw multiple things in the sky. I've got quite a few of these apps on my phone where you can look, point them at the sky. Is that a satellite? Is that this? Is that that? But there's been multiple times where we've just been sat outside, and so, for instance, we were camping, and there was a few of these sort of. It looked like stars traveling across the sky, and that's what I mean. Is it a satellite? No, it's not a satellite. It's way too high up to be a plane. What is it, sort of thing? The other week, I was literally outside in my back garden, and it was exactly the same. I actually put a video on TikTok with the filming, with the footage. And then last night, I went to the shop, and I saw a drone.
Oh, wow.
And I got it on video.
Oh, excellent. It's on your channel.
It's on TikTok. It's only a quick one. It's because I wanted to see if anybody else in Derby had seen it, because I was blown away. I was like, what? And then I was filming it, and no word of a lie, Simon. As soon as I put my phone down, because it was cold and I wanted to get to the shop, It disappeared. I don't know whether it just turned the lights off or what, but it was a red flashing drone, mate. And I was literally blown away. And you'll hear me in the video, and I'm just like, drones in Derby? And it's, but it was literally, I just took it and sent it to my girlfriend, and I was like, drone, I was like, look at what, because she seems to think I'm going a little bit too overboard with it now, because I seem to think everything is a UFO. But
by its very definition, UFO, that's why I always use UFO. It's unidentified, happens to be flying, or it could be a USO, unidentified submerged object. So yeah, it's very hard. I can relate to stories I've never related to more than a handful of people. I've probably still got spare fingers, and certainly have never said this on my podcast, but both stories are true. So back in the late 80s, a friend of mine and myself, we like what was it? It was like a Mark III Cortina or something like that. It was matte black. And we headed to Oxford because on Radio 1 or something, there'd been reports on the news of strange creatures being seen. Anyway, so off we go. A pair of goths looking like, what's that film with Harrison Ford? Oh, God, with the...
Blade Runner?
Yeah, extras from Blade Runner. Anyway, the point of the story is, so we wanted to go and see these creatures. In the end, we just turned back because we got freaked out. And the reason we got freaked out, because on the way, we were playing like Sisters of Mercy and stuff like that, saying what we're going to do and this, that, and the other. And I goes, do you want a fag? He goes, yeah. And the next thing I remember, we both got lit cigarettes on our mouths, and we like still looking at each other. And it was freaking freaky. It was like there'd been a missing time event. So I'm not going to talk about that. That's what I'm going to say about that. But that happened. Number two, a friend of ours was living on a traveller site, her and her daughter. Shout out to you, Val. Shout out to you. A really, really lovely woman and a dear friend of ours. However, when Tasmin, her daughter, I hope you don't mind me mention your name, Taz. So she's a veterinary nurse now. This is how long ago. She was about 5 back then. And she took myself and my wife, Jet, for a walk in the woods with her mother. And it was kind of getting dark. And this plane, big as a plane that civilians would fly on, but it was a military jet. It had a spotlight and it was following us. Now, it didn't act like a plane. Planes don't follow you like that. It had very little noise, and this searchlight was following us across this field. We'd just come out of this wood, and it was just, and it was so slow. Planes don't do that. And that's all I'm going to say about that one as well. So yeah, I've seen them as well, or something. I don't know what I've seen or experienced, but I've experienced 2 things that are, I think, relate to that subject.
That takes me back as well to a time when I was probably a teenager. I was staying at my sister's house at the time, and I was in the spare bedroom, and it was the middle of the night, and I was fast asleep. But what woke me up was a massive light just shining through my window. There's no like security lights or spotlights outside, but there was a massive light just shining through the window. There was no noise of planes or helicopters or anything like that. It wasn't like it was a searchlight. And that has just literally reminded me, and it takes me back, and I always think to myself, what the hell was that light? Because I can't explain that either. And at the time, I didn't go rushing to the window or anything like that. But I mean, I was half asleep. I was a teenager. I'd probably been to the pub at the time. Do you know what I mean? But there is so much. So, for instance, my sister lives next door to a military facility in Derby. It's only a TA centre, but they've got like a shooting range. They keep quite a few of the sort of army vehicle, like 4-tonners and things like that there. I was around her house the other week, and we were literally, because she likes to look into this sort of stuff as well. And we were literally stood there, and we were literally looking up, and there was this white sort of light again, and it was moving just in like a sort of circle, and it wasn't like low down, it was quite high up, but it was over the military facility.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? And it's unreal. I mean, she's got a video from another night of it happening again. But these are the things that aren't being picked up. in this country. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important, isn't it?
Yeah. And the fact that there's been 25 drone sightings in the past 4 years, and only the last few have been reported on the news is unreal as well. Because, like I say, unless it's happening in America, it doesn't exist in this country.
Yeah, unfortunately. Okay, let's move on. According to some of the testimony given in the 2 congressional hearings about these craft, the UFOs, rebranded UAP'S, they seem to inhabit some areas of the ocean on our planet. Can you talk to me about that?
What gets me is the fact we started researching the oceans quite a few years ago. We've only actually mapped 25% of our oceans, and we've only actually physically explored 10% of them. At the time, we sort of got to a point and then put we didn't, but America did, put all the funding into searching space. And that's when, obviously, that's when it all sort of changed, and we stopped exploring the oceans. And that for me has a big question over it in the beginning. I mean, underwater phenomena is something that I've only just started researching. I mean, I know, for instance, that there is apparently 12 underwater alien facilities or bases of some origin. They're all apparently meant to be sort of connected with tunnels for them to sort of travel between each other quite quickly. But again, it's apparent. There was something I was looking into a while back. So in the 1940s, I think something was found crashed in the sea or something like that. And then sort of 12 months later, nuclear testing started in the oceans. So something, do you know what I mean? There is definitely...
You think it was a demolition job, or as in, we can't have that around, or something like that? Is that what you mean?
Exactly. For me, it's like they knew something was in the ocean, and then they started nuclear testing because, you know, this is our biggest weapon. Let's start trying to blow things out of the water, and it's quite clearly not worked.
Yeah, because we went through a phase of, you know, maybe 3 decades of underwater nuclear explosions. I mean, why would you? I mean, they're blaming microplastics. Yeah, I'm sure, you know, and pollution. But let's not forget that a lot of countries with nuclear weapons have exploded nuclear weapons underwater. So is it any wonder that the fish stocks are depleted or got 5 eyes? Anyway, carry on. I'm slight exaggeration there, but carry on. Sorry.
Okay. Then obviously you've also got Congress stating that 50 of these drones have been spotted coming from the oceans. And then, you know, you had Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet at the recent conference saying that he'd witnessed, obviously, himself when he was out on exercise, UAP'S, but he had submarine commanders coming to him, stating that they have seen and witnessed underwater phenomena that can outmaneuver, outperform, and it's almost like they're playing games with our technology. It's exactly the same in the skies. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like when so for instance, the exercise that he was on, he was getting radioed in from pilots, and they were stating that there were these UFOs in the sky, and it was like they were playing with them. And it's exactly the same under the water. The statements that he got from these submarine commanders, it's like, yeah, they're there 1 minute, and then the next minute they'll outmaneuver us. They travel ridiculously quicker than the modern submarine tech as well. For me, I mean, I've only just started really looking into this sort of underwater phenomena, because my sort of go-to place first was the Antarctic, and then that sort of opened up with sort of Middle Earth and things like that, because there's a lot of theories around other areas of the planet where the UFOs could be coming from. Yes, they could be coming from underwater, but there's also a theory about they could come from Middle Earth, or they could come from the Antarctic. There's so much going on at the Antarctic that nobody knows about. It's yeah, and that would probably be a whole different.
We can't not talk about it now. You can't. We're going to do a show and tell here. So let's start off then with the Antarctic. That fascinates me. Yeah, absolutely. I love the stories or reports, or I don't use the word conspiracy theory on this show because I think it's derogatory.
We will be right back after this message.
Hi, I'm Morgan. Have you heard of foodtowear.com? Those crazy guys are giving 25% off all chicken shoes and bacon hats. Use the promo code SlickPodcast21 to get a huge 5% off all salad t-shirts and vegetable hoodies. Foodtowear.com. Wear them, cook them, eat them. Groovy.
Slick Podcast. The Slick Podcast. Yeah, it's a Slick Podcast. Truly unforgettable topic. This is Slick Podcast.
So, yeah, let's start off then with Buzz Aldrin went to the Antarctic and has reported that he had a heart attack and he came back. And the only thing he said on it, we saw things we shouldn't see. Can you talk to me about that? Then let's get into this.
Saw things that we shouldn't see. There's so much at the Antarctic that could possibly be. So, for instance, the Germans, they went in the late 1930s. Apparently, they were building a sort of facility over there. Now, when the sort of war ended, there was, Admiral Byrd. Have you heard of Admiral Byrd?
Yeah.
He's quite a famous admiral. Very, very highly notified in the US Army. One of the highest ranking admirals still to this date, apparently. He was meant to go for, I think it was 8 weeks or. It was 8 weeks or 8 months to the Antarctic to try and find this so-called base of the Germans, because they seem to think at the end of the war that the Germans ran off to the Antarctic because they had this base there. Yeah. Now, this mission only lasted, I think it was 6 weeks, and there was quite a few casualties while there was on the mission as well. And while he was there, he stated that his plane was followed by saucer-shaped craft. He also, when he got back from this, he stated that there is a severe he said that there was a severe danger to America from the Antarctic. And then literally sort of a few years later, there was this treaty that all these countries have signed, and nobody is allowed to go to the Antarctic. Me and you could not go and build a house in the Antarctic because apparently it's too cold. But, that's the reason. But there is so much. So, for instance, you look at the Antarctic. There's pyramids in the Antarctic. There is so much stuff that's going off. I mean, for instance, when Admiral Byrd went to the Antarctic, he went missing for 3 hours.
Oh, right. Didn't know that.
Yeah. He went missing for 3 hours in a plane. And this is what I mean. He came back. He made quite a lot of claims in regards to what he saw. And then literally, it wasn't mentioned again after he was debriefed when he got back from the Antarctic. It was literally just silent after that. But there's apparently an entrance to in the Antarctic as well, to Middle Earth. So The Middle Earth theory is, for instance, there is another civilization that have been on this planet a heck of a lot longer than ourselves, that live inside the Earth rather than outside the Earth. And the UFOs are actually coming from inside the Earth and not from outer space. So I've lost my train of thought again.
Again, I have that effect on people. Well, about the Antarctic and Buzz Aldrin again, that was a time where there were quite a few world leaders, or a couple of world leaders, that visited the Antarctic. The head of the Greek Orthodox Church, I think, visited, and Barack Obama, I believe, visited the Antarctic. There was I think it was about 8 months, maybe a year, where these very powerful people were going to Antarctic, that, you know, and the same place that Buzz Aldrin took a massive heart attack for what he'd seen. It's just bizarre. It's just absolutely bizarre.
The fact that even, you know, the fact that you have to get specialist licenses, you have to get specialist permission. Yeah. To go and do some, and then to go and do some scientific experiment in the Antarctic, you have to get all of the treaties permission to be able to actually go there, to get specialist permission, and then you are only allowed to actually go to a certain part of the Antarctic. You're not allowed past another part. There's also, so for instance, there's also talk about there's part of the Antarctic which is completely green. Did you know that?
I didn't. I've heard of people claiming that. I didn't know it. I don't know it to be true, but it wouldn't surprise me.
This is another part of the Admiral Byrd story as well. He flew into, and then literally, apparently, it was a case of he saw mammoth grazing. He saw,
wow.
You know, it was green fields, pastures, trees, and this was in the Antarctic. And then, like I say, when he came back from the Antarctic, it was a case of shut up, that didn't happen, sort of thing. But there is apparently a part of the Antarctic where there is no snow, and it's actually quite a warm habitat as well.
That is interesting, because it's just come to mind the German base. I think it was called like New Schwabia or something. I don't know if it is in Germany is new or it's something else, but yeah, New Schwabia. I'm sure that's what they called it in the Antarctic there. And yeah, I've heard of that Admiral Byrd before doing his. What were they looking for when they went there? It was just meant to be sort of like a reconnaissance mission at first, right,
but everybody knew it was to go and sort of search for this base that was apparent, because the Germans had been over there since 1930 something, and like I say, everybody thought at the end of the war, all the people that weren't sort of caught, you know, like the senior officials and things like that, they thought that they'd all escaped, and that's what I mean. I feel that the Americans thought would have been the end of the war. That's where, you know, the Nazi sort of regime ended, if there was anything. And when they actually got there, it was a completely different scenario altogether. It wasn't Germans. It was something completely different.
Yeah, because didn't they have casualties? And I think they lost the ship.
That's what I mean. They had multiple casualties, and this whole expedition was meant to go on for sort of 2 months, or and it literally it wasn't 2 months. It was sort of 6 months, and it lasted 6 weeks.
Wow.
And that's what I mean. It was, and they said it was due to sort of loss of casualties and things like that. But again, I can't actually remember off the top of my head what the casualties were about, but there was a reason behind it as well, and it was all to do with sort of these disc-shaped things. And he was adamant that there was going to be there is a sort of aerial threat. That was what he said when he came back. There is an aerial threat present in the Antarctic.
Wow, that is a great segue for this question then. The UFO topic has been around for a very long time in our history and pop culture. It's been, of course, ridiculed from pillar to post, but look who I'm telling, right? But now, quite the opposite be true. Do you think the powers of governors are aware of something world-changing is about to happen, or do you think it's a ruse for something else?
There's so much going off at the minute that this topic has been brought back into the attention. I mean, the drone sightings, orbs, a lot of people still are quite oblivious to everything that's going off. I mean, if you do not read the mainstream news or watch the news, you're not going to know everything what's going off. I mean, I was talking to my ex-partner the other day, and I was on about the drones. And no word of a lie, she's on TikTok, she's on all the social medias, but if it's not makeup or something like that, she just scrolls. And I mentioned the drones, and she didn't have the foggiest about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
However, at the same time, you've got Stephen. Do you know Dr. Stephen Greer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he's come out now live on social media and said he's going to be giving full disclosure on what the drones are between now and the new year.
Right.
Apparently, he's got a lot of whistleblowers that have come to him that are going to leak him all the information in regards to what these drones are. So, is something big going to happen? Absolutely. You know,
yeah.
Because not only have you got Stephen Greer, Ross Coulthart. Have you ever?
I have. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got to be he's one of my favourite guys to actually follow, watch, research. He's literally probably interviewed every single whistleblower, and I feel that he really wants to get to the bottom of it. Where a lot of other people, yes, they sort of look into it, but he's the one that is trying to get it out there the most. And he turned around and said on one of his podcasts, 2024 will be known as the year of the drones and the calm before the storm. And he seems to think that something in 2025 is going to happen massively.
Well,
you know
I mean? I was talking to James, as I mentioned to you, exactly the same questions, but I was talking to him last week. Basically, he runs a chat GPT. Now, I'm not a fan of AI, or maybe I'm just not a fan of its potential. Anyway, so I was talking to him, and he uses this chat GPT.
Yeah.
And according to that, there is a 95% chance of, in February, mass drones everywhere. And I mean, everywhere, all in the sky, and everyone will see them, according to his AI, which I thought was quite concerning. So he concurs that there will be something in 2025 of that nature. That's quite, well, I'm hoping it will be a joyous occasion and not like, War of the Worlds type thing.
Well, exactly. I mean, what you've also got to look at as well, President-elect Trump. Now, this is what gets me. You're president of the United States. You hear all this stuff about Area 51, aliens, blah, 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 blah. His interview with Joe Rogan a couple of months back, he stated that his first term in office, he was handed a note, a folder about UFOs, and he didn't open it. Why would you, if you were president or prime minister, if it was me, the first thing I would do is be like, is Area 51 real?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because,
yeah.
And I don't.
Did he give a reason for that? Did he give a reason why he didn't open it?
Yeah, he turned around and said that he was advised by a lot of close friends, and he emphasised on this quite a lot about how he was told and advised by all these very close allies not to open it. He said they kept saying, "Now's not the time. Now's not the time. Now's not the time," or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And he was like, "Right, okay." He's like, "I won't open it."
Well, I would have asked them then, who gave me this envelope then?
Yeah.
Who wants me to open it? I think, like you, I would have just opened it. To hell with it. Of course I'm going to open it. I'm the man.
Exactly. I mean, that's one of the biggest questions in the world. And when you're in when you are in the most powerful position in the world, because it clearly is the president of the United
It appears
States.
to be. It appears. to be.
Yeah, appears to be. Yeah, you're right. I just don't get it. But he's turned around and said that this time round, the first thing he's going to do when he walks into the White House is open that folder.
Right. Good.
And he wants full UFO disclosure. Do you know what I mean? He's had enough as well. One of his top aides came out and said on X that this is all to do with Project Bluebeam. And that was, what was his name? Can't remember. I did that's on TikTok as well, but I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But he came out and posted on TikTok that this is all a conspiracy, and that he thinks that it's the start of Project Bluebeam. So
the worst kept secret ever that everybody's heard of. They know basically how it works. Oh, it throws holograms up and this, that, and the other. It's like, oh, that's definitely, they'll all point to it now. That's Project Bluebeam. There's no, oh my God, there's no fooling the people once that's out, if it's actually a thing. And I doubt it is. I mean, it's so well known now. A lot of people, even though it will be real, there's this ship coming from somewhere and people are just going to laugh. No, it's not real. I've read all about Bluebeam. Suddenly it gets zapped. Oops, not so much, as it turns out.
Yeah, exactly. So, but there's definitely something happening at the moment. I do believe that the United States government. I mean, there was a journalist that came out the other day and turned around and said, if these drones aren't dangerous, why are all these hearings classified? And that's very true. Yeah, it is. That is a very good point. Do you know what I mean? Why are they classified if they aren't here to hurt us and things like that? But for me, they know what they are. Or, for instance, there may be some of. For me, I think some of them are our drones and some of them aren't. Do you know what I mean? So, that's what I think, that we're trying to find out what the ones that we don't know are.
Because there was a lot in the congressional hearings where it had been it seemed like they put the black marker through it, what you couldn't talk about, and then what they would only talk about behind closed doors. There was a lot of that sort of thing, quite nefarious, you think, wow, why haven't we got to know that?
Yeah. I was really disappointed with the last Congress hearing, to be fair with you. I feel like Mr. NASA was planted. There's a lot of, you've got to be careful of some of these whistleblowers because, like Grush said last year, if somebody comes in one of these hearings and all they keep banging on about is money, they are not there to get the word out. They are just there to get more money for funding for other projects. And if you noticed, I can't remember what his name was, but Mr. NASA, he just literally kept turning around and saying, for that, we'd need to look into that, we'd need more funding. To look into that, we'd need more funding. The only thing that I really took from that was really from sort of Tim Gallaudet and Louis Elizondo. But again, Louis Elizondo was the main witness for me in that Congress because he had actually been in possession of non-human technology and could say that. He had meetings about the non-human bodies, multiple meetings. But again, apart from that, he couldn't really talk about much. And that's really what the annoying thing is. A lot of people that I talk to and a lot of people in sort of the community, I mean, there's quite a few of us on TikTok that talk amongst ourselves as well.
Well, I think you're going, I think what I'm going to say is going to fit right in with that because there's a lot of, all names have been mentioned that deal with this research and their honesty and integrity. They still have this whole sensationalism. They feel they have to sensationalize it. Never before seen evidence. This is disclosure, the real thing. No, this time I really mean it. Just get over your fucking self and say what you know. We can take it for sake.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, because that's what I mean. That's where I was going because everybody's just getting fed up now of, you get to that certain point, and then they get asked a question, which is the question everybody wants asking and answering, and they just turn around and go, "Yeah, can we go and have a cuddle about that in the skiv?"
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like,
Yeah.
and that was all you got from the last Congress, at the Congress meeting. Everything that should have come from that first Congress meeting with Grush and Ryan Graves and the other chap, everything that came from that should have been answered at this one, and we should have got the answers at this one. And every answer that should have been answered couldn't be answered, and that's the thing. And even the Congress turned around and went, "Everybody's getting fed up with you turning around and saying that now."
Yeah, but it's the same as, like I said, it's the same as anybody with a book, anybody with a TV show or claims to speak for them or be possessed by one. You know, they just sensationalize. And I just think, if you've got something to say, if you really have got something new, then talk about it. And then, hey presto, back in 1942, you think, oh, come on. You know, we're talking to that. You know where I'm coming from, right? It's like, It's like bang your head against the wall. You know, you sex it up. You think, I've got this thing to tell you, and it's going to come out next year in season 1. It's going to be earth shattering. This isn't like 1972. There's clearly nothing to say at all, period.
If there are other very advanced life forms in our reality right now, sharing this planet of ours, in your opinion, does this give us another option to think about our origin as a species, other than we evolved from monkeys, which, by the way, has always seemed quite ridiculous to me? And I think that opinion is growing and held by many in this day and age.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because like I said to you earlier, I was brought up with religion. I went to church for 15 years. My mother was very religious. And I became a newborn Christian when I was a child and all that sort of stuff. But as I grew up, I always had more questions and more questions and more questions and more questions. And there was never any answers. And so, for instance, if something bad happened in life, I'd go to the pastor and I'd be like, "Pastor, this has happened." And he'd turn around and go, "Oh, don't worry, Dan, God's testing you." Well, after about 20 years of my life, I thought, I think I've been tested enough. And like I say, the thing that made me start looking into this was hearing that guy, David Grush, turn around and say, "I can confirm we have possession of non-human technologies," but the one for me was non-human biological specimens, which is basically, yes, we've got aliens. And, you know, you put stuff out on TikTok and stuff like that, and people will be like, "Oh yeah, they've got a dog." No, that's not what they mean. It's blatant what they're saying to you. Do you know what I mean? They are in possession of aliens. So this is when I started really doing all my research, and it really made me realize how narrow-minded I was at the time, because I used to think the Milky Way was 8 planets. How stupid was I? There's over 5,000 exoplanets within the Milky Way. Exoplanets are exactly the same sort of planet that we live on.
I think most of us know that.
Yeah.
Not really. No, we don't. I had no idea. Nobody knows. Sorry, I just had to throw that in. Carry on.
But this is what I mean. And then this is where I started. I started looking at aliens, and then I started looking at space. And then the next minute, it sort of came full circle, where then I started looking at the Antarctic. Then it took me to Egypt. And then you start seeing all these hieroglyphs with flying machines. And the more you start looking into it, there's so many rabbit holes it takes you down. And for me, there is some form of truth in this. I mean, there's a chap called Zachariah Stitchin who has wrote sort of multiple books on the Sumerians, and also a subject called the Anunnaki. Now, are you familiar with the Anunnaki, Simon? I don't want to.
Yeah, I've heard of the Anunnaki, and
Yeah. So the Sumerians wrote on tablets many, many years ago that we are basically created by alien life. We aren't the creation. And this is where I was talking to you about the Bible and things saying that, you know, it's heaven, it's earth, and things like that. A lot of the Bible is depicted from these stories from these Sumerian texts. So, for instance, the Big Flood. There is a story of Adam and Eve. It's actually called Adama and Lilith. There is so many more. So Noah as well. Noah is apparently Gilgamesh. Noah is Gilgamesh's grandson, and Gilgamesh is somebody who was part of the Anunnaki. It's like a half Anunnaki and half human. Mm-hmm. But I could waffle away, and I'm probably not making a lot of sense now. But for me, if you were to look into it into a lot of depth, because I don't believe we were. I don't believe that we were created by some holy spirit or things like that. And if you watch a film called Prometheus, have you seen Prometheus?
I haven't, no, but I know what you're talking about. I've seen enough trailers of it. Right.
Prometheus for me. So, just a little story for you. My uncle, who I used to work with many moons ago, doing sales, he turned around to me once and said, Dan, do you think film directors are fed snippets of information to prepare us for future events? Now, I watched Prometheus, and then I look back, and ever since I've been looking into the Anunnaki, because the story of the Anunnaki is basically the Anunnaki are an alien race from another planet that came to Earth in hunt for gold to be able to repair their planet's atmosphere, because they'd completely ruined their atmosphere. Now, they brought with them the Gigi, which were a slave race that the Anunnaki had defeated many, many moons ago, and they'd always been sort of servants to the Anunnaki since. And they came down to work the gold mines. Now, after a certain period of time, there was a bit of an upheaval with the Gigi. They didn't want to work the hours that they were being asked to, because there was so much fear that the Anunnaki planet, which was called Nibiru, was going to be decimated by their sun because of radiation and all that sort of stuff. They were just literally slave driving the Gigi to work the mines. But then there was an upheaval, and then, to cut a long story short, the Anunnaki made the decision to mix a little bit of their own DNA with the DNA of the people of Earth at the time, and there were more. They were like Neanderthal. They were, they could use stones and stuff like that. It was basically cavemen. Do you know what I mean? But then they mixed this part of DNA with us that made us a little bit more intelligent and things like that. And then it's the Anunnaki that taught us the way of life. It's the Anunnaki that taught us how to build. If you saw the hieroglyphs, it tells you the story on the Egyptian hieroglyphs, myths and legends and all that sort of stuff. It's not myth and legend. It's history of old that's just got lost in the past. And because it's too hard to believe, everybody calls it a myth and legend now. And that's where I think or there is some truth in it. I don't believe that we were created by a holy entity, and the plan is that we go up to heaven and we start singing and dancing for the rest of our lives. I believe that we were some form of either experiment, or one of my theories before I started looking into this and actually learnt about the Anunnaki. One of my theories was that meteor that hit the Earth and killed all the dinosaurs was actually a spaceship, and we all walked out of it.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I like that. And yeah, maybe the people who had the hand in it were the Anunnaki, but I think maybe we were carried here from some distant galaxy of some other global catastrophe. leaving off from that, in your opinion then, in the world today, who would you think would be best qualified to talk to a species that are asking for somebody to represent humanity? I know it's quite difficult, East, West, and this, that, and the other, but in your opinion, the character that you think I would trust them to speak for humanity, do you have anybody in mind?
Dr. Brian Cox.
Oh, well, that didn't take long, did it?
When you want somebody to represent you, and you want them to obviously be presentable, but have that sort of sound as well. For me, I could listen to Brian Cox all day long. I don't agree with some of the stuff he says, but some of the stuff I do. I mean, he's more universe, not really aliens. You know what I mean? But
you believe him to be a man of integrity, obviously.
Yeah, but and that's what I mean. I do respect a lot of what he says, and a lot of the stuff that he does. So for me, it would be somebody of that sort of ilk to be able to. You would certainly not send Donald Trump to go and talk to anybody. You would not send Keir Starmer. You would not send any government official.
No, that's pretty much. I think I'd be maybe someone like Stephen Fry or Brian Blessed. Imagine Brian Blessed.
I don't know about Brian Blessed. I mean, he just start talking to him, but they'd be like, ah!
Exactly. Yeah, Henry Judah. Yeah. Do you remember him, Blackadder? Henry Judah. God, you can imagine that. Yeah, that's us at the top of the hour, and I've really enjoyed our time together today. But before we wrap up, can you tell my listeners where they can find you?
Yes, certainly. You can find me on TikTok. Just literally search the Four Hat Theory Files. I'm going to be going on YouTube. I've sort of created the channel, but I've not got anything uploaded just yet. Again, that's the Theory Hat Foil Files. Sorry, the Four Hat Theory Files as well. I really do appreciate it, Simon.
Daniel Limbert, thank you.
No, thank you.
And that was the second of our interviews entitled UFOs in Our Timeline with today's guest, Daniel Limbert. Okay then, I need to focus on a few points here. The first is of time being relative to the observer. I mentioned to James last week and to Daniel today about the last 4 to 5 years being crammed full of change on all levels. From my perspective, a couple of decades worth of societal change at all levels has been crammed into this short time span. Technology, politics, culture, morality, and not forgetting today's subject on UFOs, all seem to have been compressed into these past few years. And from my relative perspective, it seems the whole zeitgeist of our age has been completely changed in that short time period and has left an uneasy feeling as a result. Just saying. So then, as most conversations on the subject of the fantastic and out of the normal everyday so often do, myself and Daniel's conversation did jump around and split off into many tangents. But the essence of what the hell is going on right now was, I think, consistent. Bottom line is that there are UFOs flying around, no longer trying to hide themselves, and the might of the military and the technology to hand available to them is not sufficient to match or catch them. Are we as a species and our defensive capabilities being sized up right now? If it is like this now, what comes next? Just think about that. Will we be looking back this time next year with regret, thinking we should have taken this phenomena more seriously? If only we had, we wouldn't be where we are now. Let's hope not. I've also mentioned in both these two interviews the ancients of Mu. Mu is a legendary landmass believed to have once thrived in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, long before recorded history. Its existence has been shrouded in myth and legend. The story is very similar to that of the Atlanteans. What if these advanced humans never went away, but chose to stay apart from the less enlightened all these millennia? There are many cultures that report the bringing of agriculture and mathematics, to name a couple, to their early childlike cultural beginnings. What if these ancient advanced humans are not happy with our culture? I mean, who could blame them, right? And the way we have, in my opinion, become completely lost. What if they decided to show their hand and take action? Lastly, what if they have done this all before? Rise up from the ocean depths and reset the planet back on course? Just a thought. Also, I'll point out that Daniel made an interesting observation also on the subject of our origin. He suggests maybe we came from another place altogether, and we were seeded here just after the dinosaurs were wiped out. On that same note, I wrote a poem a few years back about our origin, as this has always perplexed me. So here it is, and it is titled The Ancients. After nearly 3 million years had passed, the journey to the place preordained and between two great stars was reached by the ancients. Their dormant ark at rest for so long was now awoken. There was work to be done by those who had been chosen to travel from so far away and entrusted to undertake this sacred vocation. A world to form and to seed was their purpose, and in this act, memories in the old world would live again. In the beginning, one of the two stars was extinguished and pulled closer, its energy, substance and force put to its new task. Their technology, which was impossible to look upon or describe here, descended from their ark. The work for the ancient builders had now begun. For 3 billion years they toiled to create the Earth and its interaction with their ark and that of the chosen great star. The oceans were set down and divided from the land. When this was done, from the ark were carried seeds of many forms. Some would fly, some would crawl, and some would swim. The forms were cared for and given other forms that provided sustenance. Plants and trees of all variants were placed upon their creation. Through these placements of animals that would procreate and the mineral kingdom which would sustain the plants, a balance had now been achieved. The ark's relation to the earth and that of the remaining great star would determine the tides and the weather, and also keep them safe from the travelling skyfire that was born so long ago from the deep abyss of space. The builders from the ark saw their work almost completed, but for their most precious seed. Female and male, in a form exacting their own likeness, were then to be placed upon their creation. Through the many following centuries, the builders would visit and guide their descendants through morals, law, and stories attributed to their journey. Thousands of years moved forward, as many of the descendant generations had now come and gone from those first seeds placed. Precious knowledge was passed to their seedlings of mathematics, astronomy, and agriculture. The working and raising of stone to echo time and origin with seemingly impossible scale and long forgotten purpose would be taught also. And finally, when satisfied with their creation, the time had come for those who had come from infinity to return to their sleep once more. Their ark would silently and for a mountain's age continue to orbit around their creation, shining in the night, illuminating the moons, and patiently awaiting the great return. So that's my personal take on the possibility of origin for us all. Maybe a cataclysmic event happened in a star system millions of light years away, and we are the descendants of that great ark's precious cargo. Just saying. So then, as always, you have my thanks, my dear listeners, for attending this cast. If you enjoyed today's episode, give it a like. Subscribe also, if you'd be so kind. Leave a comment below or send the show an email, theslkpodcast@gmail.com. And as I said in last week's show, if you are the species that are responsible for the recent UFO activity in our world right now, come on and let's talk about it, or pop into the studio. If you decide to correspond, just like everyone else when sending an email, please keep them kind. And so, my friends, it's time for me to go. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and certainly not afraid. Bye.
Slick Podcast. Keeping it real and always keeping it groovy.